thousands of diesel vehicles will no longer be allowed to drive in Brussels.
Here's a summary of the article.
From the 1st of January, the low emissions zone in Brussels will introduce a new restriction on Euro 4 diesel vehicles, effectively banning them from circulating in 19 Brussels communes. The new regulations will apply to some 76,500 vehicles of 11 years or older that are registered in Belgium and drive in the Brussels capital region, among them cars, vans, buses and minibuses. Approximately 25,000 of these are registered in Brussels itself, Belga news agency reports. According to Brussels Environment, the rule affects the last generation of diesel vehicles that did not have to be fitted with filters to prevent small polluting particles from being emitted. A 3-month transition period will run until the 1st of April 2022, at which point those who continue to drive these vehicles in the area will receive a €350 fine. According to a study that evaluated 130,000 vehicles in the capital, cars with Euro 4 category diesel engines are responsible for almost half of particle emissions from exhaust pipes and 1/4 of the highly toxic nitrogen oxide emissions. This is in spite of these vehicles accounting for just 12% of vehicles in the region.
This post received a score of 15,000, with an upvote ratio of 93%. Here are the top comments in response to this article.
This isn't a total ban on diesels, it is the squeezing out of older Euro 4 spec diesels, generally 11 years old and up. Euro 5 and 6 spec diesel engines are still allowed. Similar restrictions already apply elsewhere.
I feel like a lot of people would consider a model year 2010 car to be fairly new. It's not like we're talking about 80s shitboxes spewing every fluid as they go down the highway.
Modern cars seem to stay newer for longer. If that makes sense. I had a crappy Micra as a first car, paid £300 for it. Looking back, it was only 11 years old. 11-year-old budget cars today are in way better shape than that thing was, as well as being a much more refined driving experience. So a 2010 car today feels a lot newer than a 1990 car did in 2001. IMO.
I wonder if it's because cars haven't gone through as many design changes compared to a few decades ago and focus more on internal bells and whistles instead. Cars in the 80s, for example, were basically boxes on wheels, while the 90s to 2000s saw a transition towards aerodynamics. Manufacturers still base their cars around this design in a way which doesn't make it feel so dated.
Time to prepare for cheap diesel cars in Eastern Europe. All aboard to EU garbage disposal countries.
When it was between 1991 to 1999, a lot of countries in Europe actually gave out grants, subsidies, just like now with hybrids and EVs, so that people would buy diesel cars, not petrol, even though they knew they polluted more. Around 25 years later and they start to ban them. Times change.
No longer serving up Brussels routes.
This joke only works if you pronounce route wrong.
Thanks. I didn't get it until your comment, haha.
Despite the Euro 4 category being 12% of vehicles in the area make up more than 50% of particle emissions and 1/4 of the nitrogen oxide emissions. Those numbers look familiar.
Purely socio-economic factors.
Brussels is in Belgium. You know, that country that is going to shut down all its nuclear power plants in favor for gas-burning power plants with gas from Russia.
Isn't every European country with nuclear plants doing that? To hypocrisy and beyond.
Luckily not. France, Finland and even now my own country, the Netherlands, are pro-nuclear.
This seems like bad news for the owners of the banned diesel vehicles.
They had literal years to plan accordingly. I know my old gasoline car will be forbidden to drive by 2025 in Brussels. I know that since a couple years already and it won't come as a surprise.
Which is perfectly fine if in 3 years you can afford a modern car. Poor people, however, don't have this luxury.
This video was automatically created by Reddit to speech. The article and comments in this video were selected from Reddit according to their upvotes, and any paraphrasing was performed by smmry.com, without any human intervention.